Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
How we doing, boys and girls?
Yes, Tiger Claw Radio. We are back. It's been, how long has it been since we've been on the air? It's been a good bit, and it feels good. So I have a Vancast that runs a little under half an hour that has the meat of today's show. And I wish I had a bulleted list, but this is mostly like all of the things that have been happening in the subsequent months. So we have that to go over, and I got some chip tunes, and then I have a couple more things. So it's going to be, it's a good, really, really good TCR. I miss doing this. I genuinely do. So let's start things off by doing a chip tune. And I've got a folder. While we were on hiatus, I kept a folder with chip tunes that I wanted to play on the show whenever I was able to bring us back. And I think it was mostly stuff that was suggested by Hemrock. And, yeah, let's take a look. Stuff from Hemrock and also from chipmusic.org, because even though it's a slow-moving website, really good chiptunes show up there. So we're going to kick things off with 8-Bit Chintendo, and this is called Strawberry Song. You're listening to the return of Tiger Claw Radio, and man, it feels good. Stick with us. Guys and gals, it's time again for Tiger Claw Radio. It is 32 degrees outside Here in southern Maryland, it rained. It snowed about a week ago. And it has been ice cold ever since. And the snow still on the ground. Thankfully, by this time, the roads are all clear. So we can get where we need to go. And apart from being cold, it's, not too big a deal. Having had snow like this in a few years, it was a really cool thing. The kids got to get the sleds out and have a good time. They had a few days off of school, but not too many. It's been great. So today happens to be my 18th anniversary with my wife. And so I will be going to get some awesome food for home date. We're doing Jersey Mike's, Jersey Mike's subs, and also Five Guys fries. Those are family favorites. It's going to be an awesome night. So I want to talk some video games because I have some time here in the car. Okay, so I've got Project Zomboid. That's the game that's been dominating my time for the past several weeks. I bought that game, I don't know how many years ago, but a lot of years ago. And I remember playing the tutorial and writing it off, thinking this game's too complicated. The tutorial was like, kill this zombie, and okay, now get out a sponge and wipe the counter. And there was a lot of right-clicking and stuff. And I got into that a little while back. And I guess those things are still true, but I got the opportunity to play multiplayer with some younger guys, some guys who are young enough, like in their mid-20s, still young enough to be like really excited about video games. And they were like, "Hey man, you got to play some Project Zomboid." So I got on there, and they had like maybe 2 gigs of mods. They were like, "Download all these mods," and I was like, "All right." I mean, it's a lot of data, but all I had to do was like check all the boxes, and it just did what it needed to do. And man, oh man, I had a great time. I can confidently say now. So this happened, I don't know how long it's been. It's probably been like 3 weeks or so since that happened. Sean, you would know because it was just before you and I played together. And anyway, I went from like maybe an hour in the game to like 120 hours or so is what it's at now. So crash course in Project Zomboid. All that for me was very recently. You got to understand, like the video game metrics for me as an adult are not the same as they are for young people, right? When young people who God bless them, they don't have the same obligations. They're like, imagine like, when you're just starting out in a game, when you got like 30 hours in or something. No. If I got 30 hours in on a game, I did okay. So put into perspective, Project Zomboid quickly became like a beloved game for me. A lot of fun with that game. A lot of killing zombies. I want to say something like tangible at what I think about the game. And the only thing I can think to say is that somehow, and I haven't quite figured out how the developers have done it, somehow they have made it where I enjoy the exploring. Because a lot of times in games when I explore, it's like, oh, there's this big world, but I'm not compelled to look at anything. But in Project Zomboid, the map is absolutely enormous, but I enjoy looking through the houses and the towns. And if you aren't paying attention to where you're going, you can wander into the woods, and it'll stretch on for like 30 real-time minutes before you see anything. So that could suck, but there's a lot of stuff hidden in it to find, and it's just been an enjoyable experience. Not without its bugs, but to quote Sean, good old Darabka, he played it with me, and it was a similar story for him. He looked at it like years and years ago in its life cycle, and he's like, man, this game's come a long way. So that's Project Zomboid. Anyway, the latest build 42, came out a couple weeks back, like a week back, something like that, very recently, over the holidays. And what I didn't know, because I'm essentially jumping into this game brand new, even though I've had it a long time, is that build has been, the fans have been waiting for it for about 3 years. So amongst the Project Zomboid initiated, it was a big deal. And it rolled out a lot of new features and stuff. So to put it in perspective, remember how I just told you I put in like 100 hours in a relatively short period of time, and how for me that's a ton? That was all in like the previous build. And today, this afternoon, for the first time, I got to play the new build, and it was pretty cool. I'm not sure off the top of my head if it's $20 or $25, but whatever they're asking for it, man, oh man, is it ever worth it. And we had the Christmas sale just recently, and I saw it, and it went down, relatively cheap, like $10 or something. And if you're willing to do business with a key site like Kinguin sells the key for like $6 or something. So up until I'd played this game, I would say that the best zombie game ever was Safe House Diaries, and I still love Safe House Diaries. Project Zomboid is better. Those are the two. Project Zomboid's the best. So those are the two best zombie games ever, and there's a lot of zombie games out there. So there you go. So that's one thing. Another thing that happened during the hiatus of Tiger Claw Radio was that all of the Resident Evil games from the original Resident Evil Tank Controls trilogy on the PS1 have all been released on GOG.com. You might remember when I went on vacation this past summer. While I was on vacation, they announced that trilogy, and they trickled out the games. Like Resident Evil 1 came out, and I was so excited for that. I played it and got further than I'd ever gotten in my life. Then a couple months later, Resident Evil 2 came out, and that was a big deal because I had Resident Evil 2 for the PC, believe it or not, and my mom threw it out. And Resident Evil 3, they were sitting on for a while, and it finally came out while we were on hiatus. So there you go. It's another move, toward whatever you think of those games. I know there's a lot of people, I want to say younger people, but the reality is a lot of people like the Resident Evil series from 4 on. They don't like those old tank-controlled games. They're really weird and awkward, and they're not for everybody. And I love them, so that's for me. But even if you're in that camp that doesn't like them, it's a preservation thing. These were games that were not. You could not play them via like abandonware. You couldn't go download a shady copy or something. They just weren't there. If you were really slick, I guess you could find an ISO and set up a virtual machine. But I got to tell you, I can't think of any game that I would go that far for. I actually went that far for one of the Civilization games, trying to set up a game with old Hemrock. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a game that we were trying to set up a play by mail thing, and I actually had the CD and I set it. But anyway, so preservation, those things are around. And speaking of preservation, another thing that happened, those games came out and the Warcraft games disappeared. Warcraft 1 and 2 were previously available on GOG. Guess what? They're gone. So that sucks. So I'm at my first stop, so I'm going to go in here and get some subs, and I'll be right back. All right, hang on. Let me get buckled up. And we are all set. I have acquired sub sandwiches. Right, so I was talking about Warcraft getting pulled from GOG.com. Now, I don't have the numbers in front of me, and it might be difficult to gauge time because I'm starting to get older, right? But it seems to me that Warcraft and Warcraft 2 were available on GOG for a relatively short period of time. Am I the only one that thinks that? I don't know why they got pulled, but they are gone. Thank goodness we got a warning, and I was able to snag copies, and they'll live in my GOG collection until that the business goes under or whatever happens. So thank goodness for that. But that's a thing. I heard there was some trouble over at GOG, and again, I don't have details in front of me, but there was a blip on the radar of the gaming community, the news cycle, that they were having some financial troubles, and what I had heard, the takeaway from it was their model is just, it's not going to be as profitable as some of the other ones. They offer games DRM free, which makes it difficult for that's easy to blame for loss of revenue or whatever. It's just not quite as profitable as as some other things. And I heard that they let some people go,
it's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of hard to tie it to like my human experience with them. But that was the thing that I read. So, take that for what you will. Some people were like, hey, it's not a great company to work for or whatever. And I don't know about any of that. But there you go. That combined with the fact that they lost, I say lost, but they lost the Warcraft games. Now, on the other hand, that's Blizzard. Warcraft and Warcraft 2, that's Blizzard. And, that could, it's thinking about it now that I'm saying it out loud, it's probably much more likely that it's Blizzard weirdness that caused it to go rather than GOG weirdness. But it is what it is. We do what we can, and we get them while they're available, and when they're not, what can we do? All right, I'm pulling into Five Guys now, so I'll have to continue this in a bit. So there you go. Man, another thing that happened that's like less newsworthy, but for my particular niche, I noticed that on Steam, and I don't know if this is recent. I don't think this is recent, but there are a large number of MS-DOS games that just like came out of the woodwork. And when I say MS-DOS games, I'm talking about like old, like what's the word? CRT? Not CRT. Man, CGA. That's what I'm thinking of. The black and the white and the cyan and the magenta, right? A lot of those came out of the woodwork, and particularly war games. I see a lot of like old 80s CGA war games. Like, I'll tell you what, if you have access to Steam while you're listening to this, look up Annals of Rome. ANNALS, which is almost hilarious. Annals of Rome. It's exactly what I'm describing. It's a little war game. Very simple. Just, put in some numbers here, which, this, that, or the other. Behind the scenes, you pop the hood on that thing. I can't imagine it's too complex. But, CGA war game, very playable. And it's available on Steam for not a lot of money. I can't remember what it was. I got it during the sale, so I think for me it was probably like $2.99 or $1.99 or something. And that's like there's a lot of those. So I don't know if like some company managed to buy up the rights to a bunch of old war games or what, but it's pretty cool. I mean, these old games, right? It makes it so that they're still around. When I was younger, this used to irritate me because I felt like it was the death of like the abandonware scene. And I guess it kind of was, but now, like, it's being distributed. All I wanted was for the games to be distributed. You know what I mean? Because if they're not distributed, then we use abandonware sites, then it's a volatile situation. Games can go down. At least now there's somebody to point to. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool. So that's sort of a small tidbit. So apart from that, during TCR's off time, we made it through the holidays. I mean, the holidays are rough, when you got kids. It's a time where, as a dad, you really have to give of yourself. So, so you can believe that I certainly did that quite a bit. But in the end of the day, I got to be with my family, and my kids had an awesome Christmas. And it's a good time. So now that it's over, I've been meaning to get back to TCR. It's something like in the past month, I think it's been something that I really wanted to do. But whenever I go on hiatus, man, I've done this many times before. When I go on hiatus, getting that first episode out is really, really hard. But once it happens, then the floodgates are open. It's not so bad. But yeah, so. Hopefully we'll be around for a little while. Good old Hemrock sent me a couple of messages in the elapsed time, and he mentioned that, the very first recording on TCR, not episode 1, but episode 0, right, that I don't think I actually released until a little bit later. Episode 0 was recorded, it was a vancast like this. It was on a little MP3 player, and I did it on Inauguration Day. It was the day President Obama took office. I recorded that. For whatever reason, I was in my wife's car, and I was waiting while she did her shift, at Best Buy. and I was just hanging out through the entire shift. So I was listening to stuff on MP3 player, just hanging out, and that's when I recorded the whole thing. So he suggested, hey man, we're getting ready to change presidents again. There's going to be an inauguration day. What do you think about doing an old Vancast for old time's sake on the 20th when we have inauguration day again? Nothing to do with the actual changing of the office. I'm not big into politics, but thought it might be fun. So here's another thing that happened recently, and I talked about this on the Discord a little bit. Back in 2005, and I know it was that year for sure. In 2005, I was really into this game ZZT, right? It's a little top-down ASCII graphics primitive shooting game for MS-DOS. The whole thing can fit on a floppy disk. And I was really into it because there was, not just a level builder, but like a game builder. You could build an entire game with this thing. And the way the editor was made up, you had a lot of freedom. You could do a lot of cool stuff, with a little scripting here, a little of this, a little of that. You could do cool things. So that came out like in 1991 or something like that, long time ago. So in 2005, it was already like abandonware. It had been released as freeware by the original developer, who was none other than Tim Sweeney, of all people, which is why it hurt to watch him become like the supervillain of digital distribution, because I used to love this guy. But anyway, I was really into the ZZT scene. Okay, there was a site that was like the cultural hub for ZZT. Called Z2. It's still up and running, and it still has all the games on it, but they're not maintaining it anymore. At that time, you could submit your game to their queue, and they would go through the queue and play them. And as long as it passed a certain bar of quality, they would add the game to the library. And when I say past the bar of quality, it wasn't a huge bar. Like, they just wanted to make sure that it was fleshed out and that it was an actual game, as opposed to somebody just dumping a bunch of stuff in the level editor and making a troll game, because there was you couldn't like validate the games like you do on, say, Mario Maker or something like that. So there's a lot of like just junk, garbage. And so I submitted a couple games. My first game got in. It was called Islands of ZCT. Always super proud of that. And then two other games that didn't make the cut for various reasons, legitimate reasons. And then, that was it. That whole site came and went. So come to find out, there was a preservation effort to put ZZT games, on archive.org. And when I say put them on archive.org, I mean set them up, with a console and a browser game so you could just play them. Back in those days, if you wanted to play one of these things, you would download the file, you would put it in the directory, and you would load it through ZZT. So trying to explain it to somebody who's never played the game before, it seemed like a convoluted process. At least it did in 2005. But now you can just play it through a browser, which is amazing. But the two games that I submitted that they did not take on the website, the ones they passed on, those were also there, available on archive.org as part of this preservation effort. So I was like, what? I mean, I guess that's okay. I'm proud of those games too, to a lesser extent. I'm glad they're preserved, but how did this happen? So I went to the ZZT, like, they have a Discord now. It's not super active, but people are still on it. I was able to go there and ask questions and get answers, so I guess that counts as active. And they said, look, we didn't get these from your submissions on Z2. I used to run a GeoCities website, and I had them available for download in like a download section. And they said what we did was we crawl searched the entire internet, at least the entire available internet, for every possible ZZT game. We searched every database we had access to, using scripts and a search engine, and everything that we could pull that was a recognizable ZZT game went up on archive.org. And so that is a bananas preservation effort, because there were thousands of these little things, I gotta tell you. So at first I found that out. I thought it was super cool. then I thought it was weird, and now I think it's super cool again. So there you go. That's ZZT and their preservation effort and my old games. I tried to make a video about it. If you're on the Discord, you probably saw me post it. And I was like, hey, this is the site. I used to think these guys were awesome. They didn't really like me very much, but that's okay. And like I showed the site, and I didn't realize when I was recording it that there was a banner ad with like a bunch of dirty words on it and stuff. I was like a bunch of like real dirty jokes, and I was like, oh, I probably don't. And I zoomed in on it. And if you watch the video, my mouse goes over the dirty banner, and you can hear me stop in my tracks. And I was just like, oh. And I just sort of played it off and kept going with it. So there you go. So this is that video. Hang on a second. Here comes Fries. Right. So that's ZZT in all its glory. So having that experience got me to check out MS-DOS again, to be perfectly frank. You know, I've been seeing it enough on Steam. I've been seeing, that happened. So, there was another thing. I was talking about old MS-DOS games surfacing on Steam. There was a game in the 80s. I don't know the year, but the abandonware sites will call it like 1985 or something like that. And I think it was called Starfleet, Revenge of Krellin. I don't know what it was. Starfleet something. And it was essentially a bridge simulator. There was a bunch of these games back in the 80s where it was like they would use ASCII graphics and text to try and simulate being on the bridge of the Enterprise, right? And this was in the 80s, and the original developer was just like, I'm making another one. And he made Starfleet 2, came out like a year and a half ago, and it's every bit of an MS-DOS game, and it looks exactly like. Apparently there was a version, like it was an update from a version that came out back in the day, and it was $10. And I bought this thing. At the time, I was thinking, it's $10 for an MS-DOS game. But I was like, come on, man. How many MS-DOS games are out there now? We see a lot of Commodore 64 games surfacing on the Retro Indie News. Because people have their like C64 minis, their C64 maxis. I see a lot of Amiga. People love the Amiga. Those guys are developing for the Amiga all the time. We don't see too many MS-DOS games. And so I was just like, you know what? Even if it's a turkey, let's back this thing. Hold on a second. I'm at a 4-way stop. People are acting crazy. There we go. It's not your turn. It's not your turn, dude. All right. Yeah. So I bought the game, and it's one of these things where, if you can imagine, well, first of all, even on the Steam store page, they're like, look, it's super niche. You know what I mean? This is only for like certain people who like this kind of thing. And man, oh man, I have never been so lost trying to play a game in my life, right? All of the controls. It's got all of the controls, It has an old school quick reference sheet of shortcut commands. I say shortcut commands, but that's not entirely correct. If you're playing Civilization, Civ 2 or Civ 3 or any of those old Civ games, or the new ones too, there are a lot of shortcut keys. And you can call them shortcut keys because as long as you dig hard enough, there are buttons on the UI somewhere that will do them, right? But using the keyboard commands is a shortcut, henceforth the name. This is like, look, you really need this to play the game. So I put about an hour and a half into Starfleet 2 on Steam for MS-DOS, but on Steam, and most complicated game I've ever played. When I first played it, I could not undock the ship. Your starship you're the captain of a starship, and it's docked, and you have like your galaxy map, which essentially looks like, I don't know, imagine like playing Battleship, and you're looking at the Battleship board. That's the galaxy map. It's got a few dots on it for planets or whatever. And then each spot on the galaxy map you can then zoom into, and there's another map, and then there's a battle map, and I'm like, wow, okay, I can see there's a world to explore, or a galaxy to explore. I couldn't undock the ship. I had to press two keys, two separate shortcut key combinations on the keyboard to undock the ship. I couldn't dig through any visual menus to do it. It was crazy, and it was very much designed for a 1985 crew, 1985 player base. This is one that they're saving for like I'm 40 now, all right? This one's for Gramps. This isn't for Dad. This is for Gramps. So, boys out there, if your dad, was in computers in the 80s, in that business, give him a call and let him know this game is out. So that was another cool thing for MS-DOS gaming. I do wish there was more of it, though. More, like, we saw more DOS games come out. I was reading on Reddit, people were talking about, like, why is that? And one person said it was because programming things for MS-DOS requires more, than it does to do, like, say you're just gonna do something. Never mind, like, if you're using Game Maker or anything like that. If you're gonna try and do something in like Lua or Python or something like that, it's a different ball game, because in MS-DOS you had to have like memory allocation, right? And you didn't have to do that. You don't have to do that in modern languages. You don't have to do that on the Commodore 64. You don't have to do that in like BASIC, things like that. So because of that, we don't see as much for MS-DOS. And that is a shame. Because that was where I grew up, man. I grew up on those MS-DOS machines. I was the youngest of 5 kids. So when we had an NES in the house, you better believe it. But that NES, and subsequently SNES when it came out, those were locked down by my older, bigger, and stronger brothers. And I spent, until they got older, and I was able, and moved on, I spent most of my time playing IBM compatibles. My dad's old IBM 386, and then my older brother had a 286 that was like in our basement, tucked away. I unearthed that eventually, and those were my bread and butter. So anytime I see something MS-DOS related, it's like, yeah, boy, that little bit from back in the day comes back. All right, so I'm about to merge onto an incredibly busy road. I think it's probably good for me to put this down. So I'm going to send you guys back to the studio. I'll see you. All right, we're back in the studio. And by the way, this is all being put together on the 21st of January. So yesterday was Election Day. I really wanted to do something on Election Day. Hemrock talked about this a little bit on the Discord. He's like, the original TCR was recorded, and I mentioned this during the Mancast, was recorded on Election Day when Obama took office. So, it's a great idea to get back in the van and do something. However, in Maryland, we had a lot of snow on the ground, and we haven't had snow like this in several years. And it just happened to fall on Martin Luther King Day, so the kids were home, and it's a federal holiday, so I was home from work, and I wasn't going anywhere, man. So it just didn't happen. But know that was a great suggestion, and I did have it in my heart. All right, so believe it or not, we got some stuff in the fail bag. Not fail bag in the traditional sense, because I just checked out Emerald Rangers, where the last episode was published. So typically the way I do this is the episode you're listening to goes out on Emerald Rangers, and then a week later it goes out on YouTube. So emeraldrangers.com, they've got like the first stuff. So if you want to hear it right away, those are the earliest comments. And I go over to Emerald Rangers and I read the headlines off of like the last couple articles that have been posted, because there's usually like 2 or 3 articles, each week between episodes. So since it's been so long since I've done one, you got to go like 4 pages back. The last one was episode 481. It was called Handheld. And there are no comments there. So no traditional stuff in that sense. But we do have some things via the Discord. So let me shift gears and jump over to the Discord now. All right. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about this. This is going backwards in order, but discussion point. Inflation hits the Evercade. Carts are up by $5. That's a 25% increase for the standard cart. And he posts a link to the Evercade pricing thing. And let me pop this open.
Evercade cartridges pricing update. So the standard cartridge is going to be $25 US, and a Giga cartridge is going to be $30 US. So here's the thing: the short time I've been in the Evercade, here's the way it works. If you get a game, if you pre-order a game when it's first announced, or when it first hits Amazon, or whenever it first hits the market, if you pre-order it, you can get it for $20. But that's really the only time you can get it at that price. Okay. Unless it happens to be a particularly unpopular cartridge, like a couple of the home computer cartridges, despite being pretty good cartridges, you can pretty consistently get at $20. And so that's the way I've been buying them, and I figure at $20 I've been okay with taking a risk, or buying a cartridge that maybe like I wouldn't usually buy. Like here's a good example. Is it within reach? No, it's not. I bought the 4th Pico Interactive cart that had Glover on it. That was the big takeaway hit was Glover. And the reason I was interested in it is because it was the first Nintendo 64 game to reach the Evercade. Even though it wasn't, necessarily a great game, the idea that the Evercade had expanded into N64, I thought was... it was big potential for the system, to cover new ground and do new things, and I thought that was exciting, so I wanted to be a part of it. Got the cartridge, showed up, sure enough, it was a bit of a turkey. That's okay. But they're putting the prices up. Like, I'm not going to make that risk at an extra $5 a cartridge. What exactly constitutes a Giga cartridge? Is that Tomb Raider? Is Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3 a Giga cartridge? The one that came out like just a couple months after we got the really awesome remaster on every other platform. So this price increase really rubbed me the wrong way, to the point where I was considering just wiping the table and selling all of my Evercade gear. And I just got a brand new handheld too. So am I really going to sell everything? No, probably not. That's a bit drastic. But I'm pissed, and I look on Reddit, and a lot of other people are pissed too. So we'll see. I hope they keep putting out. If they keep putting out things that get my attention, then I guess we'll roll with it. But the next cartridge that they're putting out is a Broken Sword collection. The adventure games, and I know that those are acclaimed games, but I'm not paying $20 to get Broken Sword on a cartridge. I'm not paying $25 to get Broken Sword on a cartridge, and that might even be a Giga cartridge. I'm certainly not paying $30 to get Broken Sword on a cartridge. Hells no, it ain't happening. So we'll see. Evercade has in the short time I've been into it, they've been able to surprise me. So we'll see. Maybe they'll pull something out of the hat. All right, let's go back in the Discord and see what else we have. Discussion point. Man, this is from Christmas Day. He posted this. Christmas morning. He posted this at 9:30 in the morning. Steam no longer supports Windows 7, 8, or 8.1. I hope you had your old Steam client downloaded to your favorite Windows 7 machine before you pulled the Ethernet cable. I suspect Steam will force the upgrade in the near future, if not already. I still have Steam running on my isolated Windows XP PC. Long live XP. At Critical Failure, I figured you might find this list helpful if you're looking to burn some Christmas money for import PS1 games. And he's got some fan translations listed. So a little bit about Steam and its dropping of old systems. I'm actually interested in reviving my one of my old systems now. I want to have a machine that can faithfully run CD-ROM games. I've got 2 old laptops that have CD drives, one that runs Windows 7 and one that runs Windows XP. Very old machines, but I got to find the chargers. I don't know where the chargers are. That's kind of a problem. And I got a desktop computer from the thrift store for $20 a bunch of years ago that does work, and I fired that up. The previous owner put Windows 10 on it, so I don't know how useful that's going to be. But I wanted to get old CD-ROM games going again. When I was 17, and I've told this story many times, I had a big collection of CD-ROM games, and my mom threw them all out. And it was devastating. And as it turns out, one of the games that I owned and became a collector's item showed up on eBay, not in not in a reseller format, but it showed up in an auction. So the Wizardry Archives, which typically retails for about $125 or so, thereabouts, somewhere between $100 and $150, that went on auction, complete in box, and I nabbed it for $35. I am so psyched. Even back then, we're talking about like old MS-DOS Wizardry, which was originally designed, to be a disc swapping game, and they fixed it all up. And that's really exciting. So I want to be able to play those again. I was mad about these games being gone for decades, and now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like just letting it go, And so it was like a little gift for old CF that the universe just kind of opened up and put in my lap. So yeah, that had me interested in CD-ROM gaming again. I went to a used bookstore with my wife, like I often do. I buy records and old sci-fi books or whatever. A lot of those places sell old CD-ROM games for super, super cheap. So I bought a couple. Empire Earth, and 3 others that I can't remember, and I'm not even going to try and recite. But yeah, old CD-ROM gaming. It was good stuff. So yeah, I might be back on Windows 7 or Windows XP right there with you. But not using Steam. I've got my Steam machine for that. All right, so here's one for you that's kind of a feel-good one. I jumped over to the last episode that went out on YouTube to see if there were any comments, and we got one from Kazlab 2086, good old Balzac, and he says, "Sent you something on your Twitter DMs." Now this is 2 months ago, and I thought it was going to be one of his trademarked audio comments that he does once in a blue moon, and it was in fact a Vakaru file, but it wasn't an audio comment. This is a clip from of good old Derek Alexander, formerly the Happy Video Game Nerd. Now I believe he's stopped skeletons from fighting, and this is an old one, very old clip of him from a lot of years ago. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and play it.
And I've been listening to also a lot of chiptune music. First off, I love those bits, beeps, and boops. I do. I gotta do a shout out to my buddy Green Leo. Yeah. Now this is a friend of mine. You may know him as Tiger Claw TV or Critical Failure, or by his given name, by his Christian name, Alex. Cool dude. I've known Alex for many years, and really nice guy. And I kind of like. I got a shout out to this dude because. This guy's going to school, he's got a wife, got a kid, he's got a review show, he does a podcast, and he still finds time to do chiptune music. This guy's released 3 records. Well, how does he do it? What's his secret? I don't know, man. Honestly, I don't know how this man, because I thought once you got married and had kids, that's it. Life was done. And then once you go to school, that, you're double done. You're double done. This guy still, I don't know, he's still finding time. So, I don't mean to be harsh or nothing. His records are very good. They're not groundbreaking or nothing, but I kind of like these records because it's first off solid chiptune, so the palette he's choosing is great. There's actually one time he covers the track from the World 1-2 song from Super Mario Land on the piano and the guitar and the harmonica. That's a really good track, but the rest of it's all chiptune. He's got 3 records up. Go to greenleo at bandcamp.com. It's all one word. But I really like his music because it's it kind of reminds me of the of our salad days when we were making music and we just kind of who cares? It was just we're just having fun doing it. Now there's this kind of pressure. That was serious business. Now there's this pressure we gotta deliver solid material, and not to say that it's bad, but there's clearly a feeling of just man, whatever, I'm gonna make some music and have fun. There's a lot of songs that kind of end abruptly and other songs that don't really go anywhere, but they still just fun to listen to, and I genuinely enjoy all 3 of his records. What else have you been listening to? Now, more music. I know you ain't done. No. I know you ain't done. Probably my favorite, for my money, best chiptune artist out there, Rush Jet 1.
Big thanks to Balzac for sending this over. You got to understand, when Derek made these comments, I was a huge fan of his work with Starship Amazing. I was a huge Starship Amazing fanboy. To a point where I can't... it'd be like, to me at the time, it was like if Brad Pitt or some huge movie star went on Entertainment Tonight and was like, hey, and by the way, Balzac is one of like my best buddies, and you were just like, oh my gosh, it's Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. Now, I haven't talked to Derek in, a very, very long time. We were never super close, but I hit him up on like Gmail. Gmail used to have its own integrated text chat, and I would hit him up on that like on rare occasions. So I did talk to him a few times, and he's been on TCR a couple of times, but it was very gracious of him to call us friends. I definitely thought he was an awesome dude, and still do. I hope he's doing well. So yeah, that was really fun to listen to, man. I appreciate you clipping that out. Okay, and last but not least, back to YouTube. There was an actual comment, like a straight comment from Death Adder, and I gotta be honest, there's more in the fail bag than I thought, lo and behold. And this was from Death Adder. It's always good to hear from Death Adder. He writes, I remember gas stations and beer aisles in 2023. Oh, by the way, quick interruption, CF again. I don't remember what we talked about at all last episode, so you got to give me some slack, all right? Let's try this again. I remember gas stations and beer aisles in 2023 had miniature towers of unsold Bud Light in comical proportions. I'm picturing the PS5 Pro stacking up like this at Best Buys and GameStop, at least for a while. Are they letting Phil Spencer do the marketing for Sony now? $700, no disc drive, no stand, no games. My refurbished Xbox Series X was $200 with no games. I'd be boiling mad if I spent $700 for a no games device. I just don't know how recently. I don't know. I recently got a Sega Saturn with a CD card that plays some quality vidya, so I'll probably pass on the PS5 Pro. Just me, a tall boy of Bud Light, and some Gex is all a man needs. It's safe to say that Jack Black has not aged well. LOL. Yes, I would agree. Poor Jack Black has not aged well. As far as PS5, I've been out of the console game for a good while, man. A good while. One of the things that I had written, in my notes to go over that I don't think I did, was I bought like a Hyperkin. I think it's a Hyperkin HD3. It's one of those cartridge-based clone machines that has 3 slots on it. I didn't get the Retron 5. It's a Retron 3, so it's got NES, SNES, and Genesis. And the reason I didn't get a Retron 5 is because I didn't want the CP emulation. And I know Hemrock out there prefers this because he's able to apply patches directly to the cartridges. The problem with that is... one sec. The problem with that is those Retron 5s can't play clone games. Or at least their compatibility goes way down. So I went with the older version, and I'm able to play a ton of games. I get my I got really into like Super Mario World clones and buying those cartridges from AliExpress. So I have a big collection of Super Mario World clones now. But it's not like in my office where I sit and play by myself. It's like in the family room on the family TV, and it's the first time in a lot of years there has been a gaming console front and center with the family. I was sitting there playing Super Mario World, and I was like, oh yeah, we haven't had this in our house in forever. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going back, but we'll see. We will see. Before we close for this week, I do want to thank the Patreon sponsors. And I know it's late in the show. We usually like to do this around the 20-minute mark. EmeraldRangers.com, Darabka, and good old Tecmo Balls are still supporting the show even after being on a hiatus. Thank you guys so much. And I want to emphasize that you three are a big proponent of why I was able to get it together and finally get back on the air. So I really, really appreciate everything you've done for the show, and I hope you're enjoying the party. So that's TCR, and I guess that's how it goes. I just intended to do a quick 30-minute TCR just to get us back on the air, and it ended up, almost filling the entire hour. So I feel pretty good about that. Big thanks to everybody who spends time listening and, hanging out, talking video games, listening to chip tunes. It feels good to be back. This is something that I very much like doing. So as we move on to this week, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week.